you spent like $200K plus on like courses, events, masterminds.
Sounds about right at this point. Why not? Oftentimes they hold themselves back just because of like the what if. And I think less oftentimes thinking about what if they don't. In the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if I have 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day to dedicate to this, like this is going to work, like no matter what.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Marketing Podcast. On today's episode, I have a 6-figure-a-month agency owner flying all the way from Toronto to Atlanta just to film this thing, Mr. Jordan Bazouzi. Jordan is actually in our Agency Founders Accelerator program, which is our mastermind. And I've watched this guy go from starting out with a job, leaving that job, and building this thing up to a 6-figure-a-month agency. And on this episode, he's going to walk you through how that entire process took place and give you some tips and tricks in the e-commerce and on the agency side to grow your business online. With that being said, enjoy the episode, and I hope you get a lot of valuable information from it. Jordan Bazouzi, welcome to the first public episode of the Bad Marketing Podcast. It's crazy saying that. It's weird saying that, but I'm definitely going to get used to that. So welcome, bro. You came all the way from Toronto.
Thank you so much, man.
And so blessed to have you here. For everyone that's listening, give them a quick little background about what you do right now, what kind of numbers you're pulling in, and then we can kind of get back to like how you got here in the first place. Because I've known you for a while, and I've seen you grow over the last 3 years, and it's been incredible.
Yeah, man. Firstly, again, thanks so much for having me on, Eddie. But yeah, it's crazy. It's been 3 years already that we've known each other at least. And, I've been running the agency for July 20th was 3 years that I quit my job before I was a welder. Full remote now, running an agency. We do around 150K Canadian a month, which is great. And yeah, working with e-commerce brands, fairly simple, to be honest. We work with you guys, obviously, on the email side, which has been super, super beneficial. But yeah, all e-commerce, starting our own e-commerce brands, quite simple.
What do you do? Like ads, stuff like that mainly, right?
Yeah. So honestly, we've kind of transitioned to like a full stack growth partner as opposed from being just a quote unquote agency, especially with, some bigger brands, et cetera, and just looking at how we can build our client LTV much bigger. Being able to bring on extra services, UGC, conversion rate optimization, things like that, email, obviously.
There's more to it than just bringing more money in, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's the real reason here? Because I did the same thing, right? I ended up, I used to do ads, and then I'm like, and this is important for everyone listening, like ads, I think a lot of people have this mistake that ads is going to solve all their business problems. But in reality, if you have a bad business, ads is just going to bleed you out faster and show those problems quicker to the public. So like what made you start expanding? Is it just so you can do more things for your clients, or did you feel like there was some bottlenecks you were facing?
Yeah, definitely a bit of both, to be honest. Like you said, ads will definitely take you quite far, to be honest, in terms of building a brand and obviously driving a lot of traffic. But as you know, right, there's so much more on the back end. And even just from, like I said, maintaining clients at a much longer rate, as well as actually being able to help them grow in terms of, actually having great case studies. I think there's a lot much more to do than just ads, right? So like I said, the back end of conversion optimization, email and SMS, et cetera, content, super, super important. And, we've kind of taken that role of being a little bit more of like a consultancy as opposed to just like a quote unquote done for you agency where, they can come to us for pretty much anything related to marketing, which has been super beneficial. Like I said, in terms of actually being able to get results, because there's just so many moving parts in e-commerce, which, a lot of people get started in e-commerce in terms of building a brand because they're passionate about X niche, right? Like,
they think it's way easier than it is.
Exactly.
Like, bro, I just made some money. It's easy.
Yeah. And so, very quickly, depending on where they're at with their brand, like they do start to realize that there's a lot more moving parts, and whether they want to bring that on in-house and, like you said, even eat into that margin a little bit more, or have like a consultancy and a team, sort of third party, be able to take over those things and really help actually grow the business as opposed to just driving traffic, et cetera.
100%. So how did you get into this world? Because I know 3 years ago you were smashing metal with a hammer. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what were you doing, and how'd you get in here?
Yeah, man. So I was a welder for 4 years full time, typical out of high school, et cetera. I was like the stoner in high school, et cetera. No entrepreneur, like focuses, to be honest. And so, trades, that was kind of what my parents were like, trades is always going to be
What did
good.
your parents do?
Honestly, my mom works at like WSIB, if you know what that is. It's basically like workers insurance. So like anytime you get hurt at work, I'm dealing with that.
And then your dad?
Printer. So
like, what do you mean printer?
He was a printer, like
Like
laid
he
off.
was the
Yeah, he
machine?
was like pretty much, you know, like definitely like an industry that like died. So my dad hasn't had a job for like at least 10 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In the sense of like his
So
dad,
like no entrepreneur background?
no, none at all.
Nothing.
Like,
And what were you getting paid like welding?
maybe like $4 or $5 a month.
Oh,
Canadian.
pretty solid.
Yeah, like pretty good. You know, in like $30 an hour range, which is pretty good.
Canadian dollars.
Yeah,
right?
Canadian
so like
dollars.
At the time, maybe like 20 US. I'm
Yeah,
just putting it in perspective. Yeah.
And you know, funny enough, like just being on social media, I always had like the inkling, like especially, you know, coming up 2016 and, you know, when e-commerce was really starting to pop off, drop shipping, et cetera. I'm seeing all this stuff online and, you know, like the OG.
Everyone on jets and
Yeah,
nice
and
cars.
all the old gurus. Like, man, the first course that I ever bought in terms of like stepping into the entrepreneur world was Kevin David's Facebook course, if you know who that is.
I know exactly which one, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he, you know, I mean, I'm not sure what he's doing now, but man, like that course I took maybe right at the end of 2019, started doing some drop shipping, stuff like that while I was welding. Just because like I knew it was such an amazing opportunity. Like, man, you can get in front of millions of people. If they enjoy the product, I mean, the likelihood that they'll go shop with you there's a percentage there. And so I started drop shipping. I was like selling the doggy water bottle. If you've ever seen those, it was actually you know,
We all sold the doggy water.
bro.
bottle.
If I
the
swear,
one with the lid that opens up,
exactly.
and we've all sold the doggy water. bottle.
I swear, if I knew what I was doing at that time, I would have
Made
printed
tens of
printed
millions.
cash.
Same, dude. I always think that.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, dude, that product was so good. And like, how did I not just go? If I knew Amazon at the time too,
Oh,
I
man.
would have cleaned house.
And like even then, like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of branding and like at least what makes a brand somewhat successful from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And so even when I started drop shipping, you know, it was like a decent brand name. It was literally K9.com. But
K9?
Yeah, K9.com, but with like a 9 as like the
Oh, okay.
and I was like getting sales and stuff, but I was I was still welding at the time. So when I was running Facebook ads, I was spending like $100 a day, but that was still like, you know,
At the time, that's like all your
oh
money.
yeah, literally.
No,
you know,
I
even though
get
I'm
it.
getting sales, I'm like,
I get it, dude.
let
When I
me
started
turn
the
off the ads.
agency, like even when I ran my own ads for leads, I would spend like $50 a day, and I'd be sweating. I'd check it at like $30, and I'm like, all right, do we have a sale?
Yeah, exactly. And so like, you know, I was definitely like probably doing better than break even on the ads. And for whatever reason, I honestly can't even remember. Like I try to think about it to this day. I can't remember why. Just kind of stopped running the ads. Probably again, budget. I was just, you know, honestly, when I quit welding, we'll dive into that too. I only had like $4,000 saved. So even though I was making like $4 or $5,000 a month, I mean, I was just spending it on dumb shit, going out with my friends, drinking, smoking weed.
Typical stuff, dude.
Yeah, I
honestly,
mean,
I have friends talk to me and they're like, "Yeah, bro, I like here's usually how I find out how much my friends have saved is like something will happen, like someone will like hack their Zelle and then like send money out, and they'll be like, "Yeah, bro, I had like $4,000 in my account," and I'm like, "Dude, you get paid more than that every month, and you've been getting paid that for like 2 years. Like, how are you in this situation? You know what I mean?" It kind of like, because I've always been the opposite. We're talking about this today, like. Everyone now sees like a Lambo, expensive watches, a nice house, like all this shit on the list. Like, but they don't realize I'm wearing like a $5 t-shirt and I've had the same shoes for years because like I don't need new shoes and I wear the same shit all the time. It's like, you know, and I really don't go out and spend money on food excessively. Like I eat a lot, but I don't go like to like the most expensive steakhouse and just rip it and ball out. Like I feel guilty doing that even to this day, but I don't know, just kind of a side riff here. Like it's harder to save money than people think.
Definitely.
Because you want to live at the same time. And I think sometimes, where I was talking about this yesterday, as you know, like it's probably, hopefully the deal's gone through by the time this podcast released, but I'm acquiring that restaurant franchise, right? And I was talking to the franchisees and they're like, yeah, we could save like 10 cents on like chicken wings here and we could do this. And I was like, guys, stop. I was like, we are not saving our way to more money. It is easier for us to double our sales than for you guys to go worry about the price of a chicken wing right now. And everyone's like, you're so fucking right. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably what happened in your life that took you here. So back to that.
Yeah. Like, you know, perfect like example, kind of like you just said. I mean, you know, when, you know, you can focus on, okay, how could I reduce spending costs or, you know, maybe make a little bit extra margin, or how can I focus on like actually developing a better skill in terms of being able to make more money.
Yep.
And so again, like, you know, the first course I bought was Kevin David's course, went through like the whole like Facebook ads, drop shipping, et cetera. And I was still welding at the time, obviously full time. So even when I was doing these courses, I mean, I was working 10, 12 hours a day. So I would literally have like an hour and a half maybe to like go through the course, implement, and do it all over again the next day. So it was like very delayed in terms of being able to understand the course, take action.
And you were working out, going to the gym?
Yeah, still working out. Like, and that was honestly like even more of a focus than entrepreneurship was. Like I was like super focused into the gym.
So that's even more time gone out the day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like no matter how you spend it, minimum 2 hours a day gone between like going there, working out, leaving, showering.
And I used to work like an hour and a half away from my house. So like I used to drive 3 hours a day. Yeah. Like, which is
where's
just,
the time, bro?
Not good.
Not good at all.
Not good. And then so, you know, I was kind of in that drop shipping world on YouTube, looking at like drop shipping things. And man, it's crazy how life works. There's a YouTuber, he actually passed away, unfortunately. He's a super young dude. His name was, I want to say King Ecom. He's like a really young guy. I think he was based in Atlanta, actually. And so I was like following him on Instagram, and he posted in a story like, I'm in London with Iman Ghazi. We're getting a Rolex. This was like mid 2019. I'm like, who's this young guy buying a Rolex? Like, this looks sick. So I click on Iman's profile, start following him, etc. Eventually, maybe a couple months of down going the rabbit hole of watching his YouTube videos, things like that, I'm getting hit with his ads for courses on how to start an agency, etc. This is like towards the end of 2019. And I've always like, you know, even at the time when I was welding for, you know, I'm pushing at like 4 years at this point, I was never like fully invested into it. Like I'm there working every day, 10 hours a day, but I'm not necessarily investing in terms of like, oh, let me go to get a new hammer and, you know, things like that. Like the people that I would work with, you know, they're come every single day. They're invested into the trade and as this as being a career. But in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that this is just supplemental for the time being. And so essentially after like, going through all that and just basically understanding, like learning about Iman's course, etc., I kind of just like took the leap in terms of buying it. Again, same thing though, like 2 hours a day. I basically have like no time to go through the course and implement it. So I go through the entire course. I'm starting to do outreach, etc. Like I have the agency name, etc. No clients. Like I said, I have like $4,000 saved in my bank account, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I can't. Like there's just no time for me to actually implement this at the scale that I need for it to be successful. So I kind of set the timeline in my head. Okay, I'm going to quit August 20th, August 20th, 2020. You know, I'm leading up to it, doing outreach via like just emails and looms, like, you know, when I get home from work, etc. And I'm starting to pick up a little bit of traction, no clients. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if I have 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day to dedicate to this, like this is going to work, like no matter what. And honestly, like just kept leading up month. And by the time I got to July, I honestly couldn't wait anymore. So I just quit a couple months early. And literally on the very first day that I quit, July 20th, we signed our first client.
Wow.
Which was actually, again, you know, definitely super lucky in terms of outreach, right time, right place, but also right client, right time. Like it was a unicorn client. So started working with them. Maybe they were paying us like $2,500 a month, but very quickly did it start to push like 10, 15 grand a month just on one client. After delivering them results, because it was honestly an amazing brand. You know, COVID happened, etc., and everything was like booming online. I'm like, okay, this is going to be awesome, and so it kind of took off from there. And you know, funny enough, I actually missed a part where initially when I was starting the agency, we were working with medical spas, and so I did get my first client, I believe, like February 2020. It was with medical spas, and then February, March, COVID happened. So then, you know, the entire industry shuts down. And
dude,
so
when COVID happened, I remember we were in the local business space. I'm not going to talk about which one because everyone's going to go and just copy it because they always do when I say things like that. So I've learned to bite my tongue. But all of them shut down at once. We lost all our clients. I had all the payroll that I needed. Luckily at the time, I didn't have that much. It was just like me, my girl, my partner, one other person, and like 2 VAs. But it was like, holy shit. We lost all our clients. Like they're gone and who knows when they're coming back. Like this could be a 3-year thing. You know what I mean? And we had to pivot too. So
yeah, and that was brutal. I mean, especially for me, that was like literally my first client. Like get the invoice. I'm like, oh man, $6,000. Like this is crazy. Literally 2 weeks later, we were funding the whole thing. I'm like, oh man, like, you know, so, and then from that point, I mean, that was kind of like the talk in the SMMA space was like, you know, is SMMA dead, et cetera. And so everyone was kind of pivoting towards e-commerce. I was like, well, I've did some drop shipping in the past. Let me see what I can mess around with. And when we did actually end up signing that first e-commerce client, it was myself and one other media buyer that like I initially, like I reached out to, I knew him from like a few other friends that had agencies. was like, yo, if I get a client interested in working with one another, and we're still working with one another 3 years later, which has been, I mean, I've been really lucky in that aspect in terms of
That's awesome.
hiring really well and not having to have a lot of transition. But yeah, like you said, I mean, from that point, it was like same thing. Me, my girl, on one other team member, and we kind of scaled from there, just all through cold email, all through Looms. 2020 kind of went from doing like 10K a month to 20, 30, 40K a month.
Which is insane.
Which is insane.
Right? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and obviously, like, you know, I have no idea what to do with this money going from, you know, making $4,000 a month and literally spending it all to having like 30 grand a month cash come into my bank account. So I'm just like sitting on all this money. And I think like this is around the time where I'm like, okay, this is like, you know, this is actually becoming somewhat successful. Let me start looking into actually how to grow this, because as great as Eman's course was, this was like definitely in the beginning of like SMMA space, et cetera. Like it really only taught you how to scale to like 40, 50K a month, maybe 80K a month at like most. But it wasn't really like too in depth. It was like a lot of the basics and just like getting the business set up, how to, like, there's a lot of stuff, obviously.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
You know, running an agency,
This is
sales,
like one
everything.
of the hardest and deepest businesses you can run.
You have to learn everything, right?
People think it's the easiest. Mm-hmm. And maybe the easiest to get to 5 to 10K.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I mean, scaling it is a whole other beast.
Scaling it's probably one of the hardest businesses you could possibly scale.
And that's where we met, actually. So I decided, like, I don't remember how I came across Joel's courses at all, actually. I have no recollection at all. But Joel Kaplan ended up investing into his courses in terms of learning how to grow an agency. And I think that was, I want to say towards the beginning of 2021. I'm not even 100% sure. Maybe earlier.
You joined late 2020.
Yeah, okay.
Like
yeah, sounds about right. Yeah,
Q3
November-ish it sounds. Yeah, it sounds about right. And then we were in like a little e-com group on like a Facebook chat.
I made that chat.
Yeah.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah. And then it's crazy how life works, bro. And I literally remember you shot a message like, yo, anyone need help with emails? I was like, let me shoot this guy a message real quick. And then the relationship took off from there. And man, like I said, like just learning from Joel, learning from you, learning from people who have actually run a skilled agency, a real business, was super important. I mean, even getting into, this is kind of like way down the line, but like agency founders accelerator, things like this, like actually be able to see behind the scenes of what it takes to run, a 6-figure a month plus business, and turn this into actual 7-figure business. So
what's the biggest key you feel like has been going from, I mean, let's not talk 0 to 10K. People can find that information online, but like, you do 6 figures a month right now. Mm-hmm. Like most people don't do that a year. So like what's been a few of the biggest keys to get here? Like things that you've done. Doesn't need to be moments, but it could be like mentality or habits or things like that.
Yeah, I think, one thing that always plays in the back of my mind, like even when I'm just like in the mundane of a day-to-day, like in the agency life, can't remember the specific term. You know what? Hermosi said it actually. It was you need to be reminded more than you need to be taught. And so many times, like I said, we got that first client through cold email and Looms, and we got like the next 10 clients through that way. And oftentimes people kind of get to the point of like, oh, we're doing 50, 60K a month. Okay, now what? Like, what do I have to do differently, so to speak? And I did try that, quote unquote, in terms of like running ads, doing different ways to acquire clients. But I would always find myself going back to like email, cold Loom, things like that in terms of just simple scales, fancy fails, and just multiplying the output in terms of what was already working. And I swear, I tell that to people all the time. Like, I think the majority of the time, someone doing 30, 40K a month, the difference from them doing 6 figures a month is usually just time, to be honest. Like they kind of know what to do already. They just kind of need to do more. And 90% of the time, it's usually just a time frame in between of, I mean, I've been doing this for 6 months. We're here. Give it another 6 months. We'll see where we're at, right? Implementing exactly what you're doing. I think oftentimes there is a time to change the strategy, but, scaling from, like we said, like 30, 40, 50K a month to even 6 figures, it's probably just more of what you're already doing.
What else?
The other biggest thing I would say, and that was probably something that changed within the last year for us the most, was probably focusing on team and legitimate, A players in terms of actually being able to pay for the quality of work. And I think at last Agency Founders, it was either you or Nick brought it up. Maybe someone else brought it up. I can't remember. But basically, would you rather pay for experience or pay for talent?
No.
Or pay for experience.
Hire based on experience, not based on potential.
And that was like a big shift for me in terms of, actually being able to have some finances, being able to actually pay these people that have had the positions before that can teach me things as well, right? So like they say all the time, not to be the smartest person in your business necessarily in terms of each individual service. Like I definitely know my way around an ads manager, et cetera, but I'm not the one running the ads, So that's been obviously super beneficial. Again, as easy and as cliche as that is, I've been very lucky in terms of finding good team members.
Do you ever feel like your new team members underestimate how much you know about like the technical side of things that they do that you don't necessarily do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're always getting bullshitted, I feel, to a certain degree. And especially, I mean, not necessarily bullshitted, but, it's very hard, especially with a fully remote team, to kind of be sitting over someone's shoulder in terms of, how long does this take? Like for editing, for example, like I'm the worst editor ever. And for the content that we do, it's definitely not extreme, but I don't really necessarily know how long an edit should take. You know what I mean? So I'm like, in those situations, I feel like, I don't know, maybe it could be a little bit more quick in some aspects.
For me, sometimes if like my team, like something technical, like they need to like the automations guy needs to set up a Zap, or like the ads guy needs to do something in the ads manager, and not that they're trying to BS me, but they don't know how much I used to do. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I can go in and like in a half day build out an entire funnel, connect the Zaps, write the emails, run the ads, make the graphics, and I can do it all within like 4 hours. Like that's skill set. You know what I mean? And these guys always forget. It's so funny because like I'll see my team like say something, or like I'll come in and do something, and they're like, whoa, how the fuck did you just do that? And like, how do you know how to do this? You know what I mean? I'm like, do you get like, you guys forget I did this shit for like 8 years straight before you fucking came on the team? Like these guys just see now.
Glacier effect.
Yeah, they see like CEO right now. They're like, oh, Eddie is like always on calls. Like he tells us what to do. He's a good CEO, but like,
which is super important. I mean, obviously, because it's very easy to be bullshitted if you didn't know what you were doing.
In this world, it's insanely easy, bro. I get on these interviews. It's so funny. I get on interviews sometimes and like, not for my team, but like for other companies. I consult other companies, and sometimes I help them hire like the CMO role or whatever it is, right? And I'll get on the interview. They're like, dude, this might be the most qualified person I've ever seen. Like this guy knows everything. He's got all the terminology down. Like he's a fucking killer. And then I'll get on, and in 5 minutes, I text the person, this guy's super underqualified, has no idea what he's talking about. You know what I mean? It's crazy like how easy it is to bullshit other people if you don't really know.
Like you were saying outside, you just use some special words and people will be like, oh, I don't even know what he's talking about. He must know.
Sometimes that's all it is, dude.
Yeah. That's sales for you.
That's cool. And I think something that you didn't touch on, which I was hoping that would be one of your answers, you've invested a lot in yourself, bro. You know what I mean? You've bought programs. You've showed up to both my events. You've bought my mastermind. You've bought other people's coaching programs. You go to other masterminds. I mean, I just what I know you spent like $200K plus on like courses, events, masterminds.
Sounds about right at this point.
You know what I mean? So like, I think that's also something important, right? Because like,
definitely,
you could have chosen to have $200K more cash in your bank. Or you could have chosen to have $2 million worth of knowledge in your brain. But I think a lot of people have trouble understanding that money can come back with those skills. And I think a lot of the reason people don't invest, actually I 100% know that the majority of people that don't invest in courses, in masterminds, in whatever it is not because they're skeptical of that. It's because they're skeptical of themselves actually getting an ROI from that. And it's intrinsic. It's not, and they like to blame it on like, oh, well, what's in the group? Like, are you sure I'm going to get value? Or well, what's this? But I think what it really is them being like, I don't think I'm good enough to like spend $10,000 and go and make more than $10,000 because I did. And I think it's an intrinsic problem. And I think a lot of people need to overcome that fear. I remember the first time I spent money to go learn from someone that wasn't like an online course. Like I spent like $500 on a course, $1,000 on a course, whatever it was, right? But to go and like in person and like do some sort of coaching group or something with someone. And I spent $3,000 to buy a ticket. And it was in San Diego. And I remember my dad taking me to the airport, and he was like, how much did you spend on this? And I'm like, $3,000 plus plane plus all this stuff. And I didn't have that much money in my account. I was living out. My dad's driving me to the airport. And he's like, there's no way you're going to make that back. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? First of all, like, I already paid. You're driving me to the airport. Like,
Thanks, Dad.
Let's change the tone here. You know what I mean? But I was like, no, I'm definitely going to make it back. He's like, yeah, I mean, I hope you do, you know, but I think you're going to have trouble. Like, I don't know if this was a good choice. You probably shouldn't have done this. And I was like, whatever, Dad, you know, like, I know what I'm doing here. And I've had that mentality since day one. Like, I make money, and I literally, unless I have an emergency that I have to put it into, I will take it and I will go buy more knowledge over and over and over. And it's so funny. Like, you and I were talking yesterday about like all the opportunities I have on my table just this week alone, right? Like all these companies that are asking me to like invest in them or be an advisor and like all these things at once. And the only reason I'm in this position is because of all the money, the millions of dollars that I've spent learning from other people and paying them for knowledge and resources. And even right now, like, I'm going to buy this restaurant franchise, right? Before I even bought it, I paid someone $10,000 to get on a call, a founder of a franchise in the restaurant business. That's huge. I paid him to get on a call to evaluate with me the situation and tell me his opinion of, should I do it? And two, if I do it, what should I do? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that $10,000. There's only three scenarios. Is I'm walking away with information that will help me make this deal better and work. I'm stopping myself, scenario two, I'm stopping myself from doing this deal because he thinks it's not a good deal and he's someone that I should listen to. Therefore, that $10,000 might have saved me $200,000. Okay. Or option three, which is really in all of them, is I'm always walking away learning a lot more and having that connection. Now I can text that guy.
Yeah. 100%.
I just paid him $10,000 for a call. Like, we have an open communication. There's a mutual respect, right? Even when someone pays me, like, I charge like $3,000 to $5,000 an hour, depending on what I'm going to have to do on the calls. When someone pays me, now we're contacting the phone. Then they ask me random questions throughout the year. And like, there's a relationship that's established. And I think a lot of people are afraid to bet on themselves by paying for courses, by paying for mentorship, and like by paying for people's time to establish those relationships. But all my best like monetary business financial relationships, like, have all come from me buying a seat at the table first. It's like, I'll pay to come to your mastermind. I'll pay to come to this event. I'll pay for you to consult me. And once that is there and we're on a call and we can establish a mutual respect because of my intelligence and my skill set and what I bring to the table, but it just happens so that I paid you to bring me something first. But now you realize that the feeling is mutual and we can both benefit each other. It creates a very synergistic relationship. So I just wanted to dive in on that for a second because I think that's a big part of why you're here, actually.
Yeah, definitely like super, super underrated. And like, I mean, you see it everywhere, right? Like, I think definitely skepticism is a part of it just because, I mean, I think a lot of people aren't necessarily brought up, like you said, to necessarily believe in other education outside of like their normal education that, you know, school, college, etc. Which is definitely something I think is going to change as we get older and our kids go to school, etc. In terms of like being a little bit, have more specialty schools, like, you know, everyone doesn't need to take an online course and figure out how to run an online business. But very rarely does it make sense, I think, to go to like a community college or just like a more general, broader application of school. Whereas like specific, whenever I was welding, I mean, I went to, again, back to investing in yourself, I went to like 4 or 5 different welding specific schools to get like certificates, etc. Which again, the first time I did it, I went from $15 an hour to $20 an hour. The second time I did it, went from 20 to 25. Third time it was, you know, over $30 an hour. And like you said, going back to learning how you can, you're going to make that money back 10x, especially even with the relationships that come with it, is super beneficial. And one mentality that I've always had in my mind when it comes to spending money on stuff like this, like you said, I've probably spent, you know, well over 6 figures at this point, definitely, which, you know, I haven't even really thought about it, which is crazy to think about. Is like,
most people hold on to that.
Yeah, exactly.
And they save up and they go buy a house with it or something. You know what I mean? So,
and I think like, again, back, even same thing, like the reason I have like the mentality is, one thing I was keeping in the back of my mind is, funny enough, Russell Westbrook's like mantra pretty much, like, why not? Like, why not invest this money? Like, the worst that can happen is, you know, I'm out 10 grand, but I'm still learning a hell of a lot more, or whatever the cost be. So as long as I'm not absolutely going broke, and I mean, even, you know, I still obviously made the risk whenever I quit welding and started the agency. You obviously have to have that self-belief, which is super, super important.
Yeah, 100%. So In running the agency, you know, you're fully remote. You don't have an office. Question number one, do you wish you had an office, or do you like the fact that everyone's remote?
You know, as we're, you know, we're in the midst of starting our own e-commerce brand right now. And, I'm super excited. I can't wait to go in office, to be honest. Like, that's a goal soon, is to build more, like it's, you know, maybe that's a limiting belief I have, that like, there's going to be a limited amount of like the talent that I'm looking for is, you know, we're so used to having unlimited talent pools to pick from, right? Like, they're remote, they can work from wherever they want, any state in the world. But I would definitely love to start having that team aspect in terms of going someplace into the office, like working from home. It definitely bleeds into your personal life, obviously. You know, I'm working from 8 a.m. to, you know, 11 p.m. So, you know what I mean? Like, it would be nice to have a place where, you know, you can go to work, per se. That's not an hour and a half away like I used to drive.
Yeah, definitely don't book it that far. So out of everything you're doing in running an agency, what do you feel like is the most difficult part of this business?
Man, that's a good question, to be honest. Like,
you're like, there's so many fucking things.
Yeah, like, you know, like, even at my scale now, we're like, you know, we're definitely like a decent sized team doing 6 figures a month, but we're not like crazy. So it's not like I need 20 team members per se. Because a lot of the workload can still fall on my shoulders in terms of sales and things like this, just because the scale isn't necessarily there to justify hiring a full-time salesperson or things like that. So honestly, I'd just say it's probably just the juggling of just the different tasks on a daily basis, like whether it's sales, whether it's, you know, as a single founder, kind of being, you know, the lead in terms of overall strategy, which is definitely something that not necessarily, I mean, I've never had a business partner per se, so I don't really know what it looks like on the other side, but that's definitely a challenge, I would say, is being like the sole brain in terms of moving the ship forward. That's probably my biggest struggle on a day-to-day. Okay,
makes sense, yeah. And like right now, I think we kind of talked about it this morning before the podcast, like client acquisition. I'm sure it's a big thing that people are asking for. You said you tried ads. You had some trouble doing ads. You went back to what you were doing originally. What is it that you're doing right now to acquire clients? Because here's the thing. We work on a lot of clients together. And, you know, you have some great clients too. You know what I mean? Like we do the emails with you and we work together on that. And, you know, you definitely have a lot of results and great success with these clients. And I don't think anyone can doubt that just based on what you're actually doing for these guys. But you're getting some pretty good clients. Like how are you doing it?
Yeah. So, you know, we're still running ads, just as, you know, I think as a marketing company, you should still at least be marketing your business. So again, whether it's, you know, through acquiring leads and, you know, selling them on a downsell or something like that, or, you know, focusing on customer acquisition that way. But, you know, from an agency perspective, I always say this to people, like, you know, to run ads, you definitely need to have a decent amount of capital or something to downsell them on, just because if you're in the e-commerce space, I mean, you're looking to work with less than 1% of the world in terms of people running a 6-figure a month store, if not, you know, more, right? So you're definitely dealing with all the competition in terms of all the other agencies, and then you're advertising to 0.5% of the population. So very high cost per acquisition. And, you know, until you do have the capital to justify that, or you can actually have a decent quality selling downsell, then it's very difficult, I think, for anyone to run ads profitably, especially, you know, again, that comes down to like the mindset as well, right? So when we do run ads, and we've acquired maybe like 2 or 3 clients through ads in like 3 years. So it definitely works in the sense of, you know,
I don't know about that.
Well, you know, it definitely works in the sense like we've made our return back over the lifetime of the client, right?
Yeah.
We're definitely going negative in that first like 2 or 3 months of the acquisition. But the way that we mostly acquire clients now is still through cold email, paid ads, or cold email and cold looms. Super, super simple. But the reason why, like you said, we have a really good quality roster of clients is just because we can be really nitpicky with the brands that we want to work with in terms of who we're reaching out to, et cetera, and the offers that we're building around them. And obviously it helps in terms of, you know, working with high quality clients, getting referrals, et cetera. But the majority of our deal flow definitely comes through cold email still, which bread and butter.
So like, do you just take any client that comes to you and just wants to pay you money and can afford it?
Well, no, obviously, in the sense of
why not? Why? I mean, it's not obvious. I'll tell you that.
Well, it depends on the service.
Hey, Jordan, I have $10K a month. I want to pay you.
Well, I would definitely look at whether our service would make an impact in terms of what their business is, right? So like, you know, in the agency space, you're definitely going to go through churn. Like that's definitely a part of the business. And sometimes it's kind of hard to make that judgment call. I'm sure we've all made the wrong judgment in terms of, having to bring on those clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
sometimes you have to, dude, right? Sometimes you're in a position where like, okay, no, I don't think it's impossible to make it work for this client. I definitely think I can make it work. I just think it's going to take way more effort than the other ideal client that I would have. But I'm in a position based on my team where I need to, I'll take the money and bring on this client. And I believe I can do a good job. And even though it's an uphill battle, I think I can pull it off.
And at the end of the day, somebody has to do it in terms of like either their business is shutting down or like they're going to go somewhere else for marketing.
Somewhere else and they're going to screw them. They're going to be worse than you are, right?
Exactly.
And they're going to charge them the same thing. So it's like, it's really one big dilemma because then you're like, okay, like there's definitely a risk of this client churning sooner than later because of the way their business is set up or whatever the case is. They're just not really a great fit for what we're trying to do here. You know what I mean?
And like you said, I mean, it really depends on where you're at with the agency, whether, you actually do have the ability to take those clients on. But we do try and do as much as a vetting process prior, right? And that's why it really does help from the cold email side where we have all the control in terms of who we're reaching out to. So like, of course we get inbound through like organic content, whatever, referrals. But still, most of the deal flow is all cold outbound, which is just allows us to control that quality of client really, really well.
Yeah. And, since this is a bad marketing podcast. I like the sound of that. Since this is a bad marketing podcast, I want you to give me like an example of a really badass marketing campaign or objective that you knocked out the last year that I think people could take away and like take some sort of strategy from. I've seen the accounts you have and I've seen you fucking boom some of these guys to 7 figures a month. I'd love to hear something cool that you did the last year that was just fucking bad.
Yeah, one thing I think, it's actually, not necessarily too in-depth or unknown, but I don't think a lot of people utilize them enough, especially, smaller 7-figure brands that maybe don't necessarily, you don't know what you don't know in terms of strategy, right? So probably some of the biggest successes we've had in the last 12 months has been, obviously scaling accounts from, spending $5K a day to $20K plus a day in spend. But the biggest, driving factors behind that, I would say community. Number one, like the brands that we work with always have such a strong organic community that obviously there's a bit of over attribution in terms of the ads, et cetera, but as well as it really does help in terms of having so much social proof. And the other thing is, kind of piggybacking off of that community, utilizing white labeled ads. So like that's one of the biggest things that we always recommend is even running ads. It works so well for like through the owner's account, like if they're open to having their face behind the brand. That's just been one of the smallest things for us, which a super small tactic. But if you can do that with, 15, 20 creators on an account, you're advertising to, millions of people that you otherwise wouldn't have through their account, right? So you're leveraging their trust, you're leveraging, the brand that they've built, et cetera. And you're obviously driving traffic back to a great product that there's a synergy between the creator and the brand. So that's been something super easy to get set up on the brand side that, they can reach out to literally anyone. Like I said, I even recommend that the owner does it themselves, running ads through the owner's page, just so that way we can have a different page running the ads and different areas for the ad account to sort of spend money. But that's been super beneficial in terms of being able to scale the brands we work with.
Nice. And what do you feel like is the most consistent thing that's working for you across the board right now? Like what platforms are working for you? What are the things that you're seeing? I know in the car we talked a lot about CRO. And that's something that's super important if you bring on a brand that just doesn't convert well on the site. Like talk to me a little bit about like what you're seeing in the space right now.
Yeah, conversion rate optimization, we've probably brought that on maybe like 6 months ago. And that's been such a help in terms of not only just like aiding our clients from a consulting role in terms of what do you like bringing the client problems in terms of like showing them what we could be working on in terms of the website and optimizing it further. Obviously, if we're spending tens of thousands of dollars, a month on paid traffic, a lot of these brands, like I said, they're just brand owners in the sense that they don't necessarily, you don't know. They don't even know that there's work to be done on the website. They're kind of happy with their 2%, 3% conversion rate. So stuff like that has been super, super easy to implement just because, again, a lot of these brands are missing some of the most basic conversion rate optimization things that we can kind of plug and play a lot of these things into different brands, which has been super easy for our team to manage. And then on the back end as well, like I think just the ease of creating UGC for these clients, but in a more of a different approach. I think one brand that does this really, really well is Dr. Squatch. If you've ever seen their UGC ads, that's sort of a big approach that we've been taking in terms of, if you notice a lot of their ads, the beginning of their creatives are so random. Like it's, like kind of like ASMR clips or someone squeezing soap out of it. Like it's just the most random clips.
Just hooks.
To gain attention, obviously. And so doing that, obviously, with the brands that, are not too picky with creative has been super beneficial as well in terms of being able to drive traffic and kind of have that domino effect in terms of higher click-through rates, lower cost per click, and then obviously it's a domino effect into our return.
Love that. That's amazing, dude. So what's your plans right now with the future of this agency? Like you've done it. You've made 6 figures a month.
Yeah.
Is that the goal? Is there more? Do you want to exit it in the future? Like what do you see as a plan here? What do you want to do with this?
For me, I kind of, I love e-commerce, honestly. Like we serve e-commerce brands and I love brand building. I love the idea of selling products to a consumer that is going to reach hundreds of thousands of people. You go out on the street, see your hat, for example, someone's wearing your clothing brand. I think like something like that is something huge to strive for. So on the agency side, I definitely view it a little bit more, personally as definitely as you would know, it's definitely a high cash flow business, which maybe e-commerce is definitely a little bit less of a high cash flow business.
A lot more or less.
Yeah, exactly. And so
I have people who do like, it's so funny. It's so funny. This is actually something we should talk about. Like I see so many people who flex hundreds of thousands a month on their Shopify store. And I know damn well that they're keeping 15, 20K.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's so sad how many people I go into their businesses, and from the outside, you're like, oh, wow, okay, just got a client that's doing 400K a month. Sick. Like, they're going to be good. We're going to take them to $1 million. And then you get in the back end, we're like, bro, why are you doing this? Like, we just had a client, and we've been working with him for a while, and he never gave us access to, like, his P&Ls and books, right? Like, we're just the marketing guys. And then 1 month we did, like, I don't know, $1 million, let's say. And blah, blah, blah. He like came to us and he did the math and he's like, hey man, like I only kept like 15K last month. And I'm like, stop, bro. Like you kept 1.5% of the total business revenue. Like something's wrong. So we evaluated his P&L. We're like, can we get more involved in the P&L side? Like just as a courtesy. Sure. We went through the P&L. We found like a million things that was going wrong. Places he was like putting money in that he shouldn't have. COGS were too high on certain areas. Like a million different things, whatever the case is. 2 months later, the dude took home like $400,000.
Damn.
Net.
From the adjustments.
And we increased revenue at the same time. But it was like a mix of both, right? And it was like, damn, dude, these people are operating businesses that look to everyone else in the world. Dude, Jordan's killing it, man. He's making $1 million a month on a Shopify store. But like, it is so easy to mismanage your cash flow. And most of the people, especially at a drop shipping level, are spending so much money in ads to get their sales, and there's disputes and returns on the back end. And I think there's just a lot of fake flexing online that misrepresent exactly how much money and how hard it is that to run an e-com store properly.
Yeah, and that's why I'm super excited to start running an e-com store, just because I feel starting on the agency side before the brand side is such an advantage, to be honest.
Big time.
Because again, like I keep
saying, and
saying,
vice versa. Starting on the brand side and then starting an agency is also a huge advantage.
Exactly. And you definitely have a sales advantage in that aspect. We used to run a brand. But yeah, like it's, I'm super like that's the kind of the goal over the next couple of years, is start building our own brands, and hopefully looking towards actually building brands, not drop shipping companies that we can actually exit from. And just utilizing the marketing team as a cash flow for the e-commerce companies.
Love that. Well, I'm very grateful that you joined us, bro. And I think watching you grow the last few years has been incredible. We have a very tight relationship at this point. I saw you at Agency Founders, and I saw you again in Denver. And then I
get rid of this guy.
I can't get rid of this guy. I see you in Atlanta now. I'm going to see you at Agency Founders again in a few months in January. So I just want to say I'm very blessed to have you as a friend. Very blessed for how this relationship started, where it's going, and seeing you grow over this time has been freaking incredible, dude. And you're an inspiration to so many people, even on Twitter, bro. Like you're like a fucking superstar right now. It's really cool seeing that, and just very happy for you. But before we call this, I wanna see if you have like one piece of fortune cookie advice or some sort of like takeaway for anyone listening, if they made it this far, to like take away into their life, some sort of piece of advice that you give to like your younger self, knowing where you're at right now.
Yeah, I would just 2 words, I think. Why not? Again, you know, like that's like, honestly, I want to get that tattooed, to be honest, because I live by it so much. I think like that's oftentimes they hold themselves back just because of like the what if. And I think they're left less oftentimes thinking about what if they don't. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that holds people back in life, is more thinking about like what could go wrong, etc., as opposed to why not? Like, let me just try. The worst that could happen is X, Y, and Z. And that's honestly been probably the biggest thing in terms of my growth. Just that sort of mindset. Super, super simple.
Makes sense. And you said Russell Westbrook says that?
Hell yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
One of the best players.
How many shots he misses. And
Whoa, relax.
Just keep shooting. And fuck it. Why not?
But why not, bro?
Why
Listen,
not? 2
worst
for
could
20.
happen is I'm walking away with $100 million.
Worst can happen is I'm getting traded to another team every fucking year.
Fuck it.
Yeah, but he was incredible in his prime, though.
Yeah, hell yeah, bro.
But thanks for getting on the show, dude. I appreciate it. For those of you guys listening, follow this guy everywhere: Twitter, YouTube,
just
Instagram.
The last name, bro. Bazouzi.
Did you say Zed? You were so French and Canadian.
Everyone says that. Yesterday when I was checking in the hotel, they were like, "What's your last name?" Like BAZ, and the person's like, "I'm like Z." Oh, like bro, like do you guys not know the other
Z? You know that, right? I only know because like I'm French, not French, but like Lebanon's
Zed.
French.
It must be Canadian, I think.
No, it's French.
Well, that's even worse.
Zed. Yeah, Zed is French.
Oh, I always say
and
Zed.
Canadian zip codes have Z's in them.
Oh man.
So everyone says like Z12 or whatever, like, and everyone's like, "What the fuck are you saying?" It's even worse now that Zed is like a fucking famous artist name.
Yeah.
It's like, Z12.
They're like, wait, what? Are you the artist?
Bro, what are you saying? Yeah. So yeah, ZZ, everyone, fucking B-A, spell it like a fucking normal English.
Bazouzi.
Thank you. Like, you're acting sarcastic, like we're spelling it wrong, bro. You're fucking saying you're spelling an entire letter inside of a fucking word. Anyways, thanks for getting on, bro. I appreciate you coming by. Everyone give him a follow. This guy puts out a lot of game.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Peace. Thanks so much for watching another episode of the Bad Marketing Podcast. I hope you got immense value from it. And if you did, all we ask of you is that you share this with a friend that you think could find this very valuable. And depending on the platform that you're watching or listening to this on, please like, subscribe, or rate the podcast as best as possible. It really means a lot to us. We pour so much money, time, and effort into getting these guests here, filming all this, editing it, all for free, just to give you free value. And all we ask in return is that you just share this with people. You give it a positive review so that we can continue to reach more people and impact more lives with all this effort that we're putting in. With that being said, thanks so much for tuning into the episode, and I look forward to continue to provide you more valuable content moving forward on the Bad Marketing Podcast. Make sure you subscribe.